Hey guys, welcome back for part 2 of this brand new DIY kitchen makeover series. Today we are taking out these builder grade laminate countertops and replacing them with a DIY butcher block. I'm going to show you every step of the way, cutting them, installing them, finishing them to look like a professional did it, when really this was a DIY kitchen upgrade that cost us less than $1,000. It turned out so beautifully. I cannot wait for you to see the finished project and every step of the way so that you know that making these home updates is totally achievable for you no matter your budget or your skill level. So give this video a thumbs up if you are excited, subscribe so that you don't miss any of my future videos, and let's get into it. Okay, so as you can see, step 1, we took out the kitchen sink, and while it was a little bit more involved than the few clips that I just showed you, it really wasn't too difficult. It made a big mess though, and it is one of those things that you don't necessarily think about when you're planning a project like this, similar to taking off the backsplash and having to repair drywall. Now, we did all of that before we started filming. There was a backsplash strip, and that just hides the gap between the countertops and the wall. And when we removed it, it did cause a little bit of drywall damage, so that had to be repaired and spackled and sanded down, and that is a little bit of a tedious process. So there's actually a whole day's worth of work before we actually got the countertops off. And I wanted to take a second to point it out because, like I said, these are little things that you don't anticipate when you're trying to allot time for a project like this, but they do add up and it can lengthen the entire project in general. So anyway, once the backsplash had been repaired, the sink was out, it was really easy to remove the larger pieces of the countertop. I was actually a little surprised that there's only a few screws that you have to take out on the corners and in some other areas like next to the dishwasher and where the countertops meet each other. You just unscrew those screws and then the countertops come right off. Now, we did keep this intact instead of breaking it up because we could then use it as a template when we were cutting our butcher block, which saved a lot of time and headache. So if you are going to be doing a DIY butcher block, I would definitely recommend that you keep your old countertop pieces and use them as a template when you're doing your cuts.
Our only casualty taking these countertops out, this half piece of trim that snapped off right here, but that's fine. I think that we'll be able to replace it, no problem. Could have been a lot worse, but now we have all of these countertops off. It was actually way easier than I thought it was going to be. So the whole island was only screwed in on the 4 corners. There were no screws in this center part here. It was more secure on the rest of the countertops though, but this is literally all that you have to do. There's these support pieces and there's these really long screws that come up through them, and that's what holds the countertops in place. So you just have to unscrew those and then they come right off. So if you're ever looking to do a project like this, feeling intimidated, like you don't know what demo is going to look like, this is what it looks like. We always make it out to be way more involved in our heads than it actually is.
Like I said earlier, doing a project like this is very involved and takes a lot of time. It's a big project, but there are some things that I can share with you that can help things run a little smoother and eliminate a lot of the stress from trying to work on something like this. So like I said, definitely keep your old countertops and use those as a template and to double check your measurements. But when you're making your cuts for your new countertops, a few tips here. You can use painter's tape to tape down where you're going to be making your cuts so that your wood doesn't splinter and there's no sanding that would be required after making the cuts. And then also clamp down a straight edge to use as a guide for your saw. This is going to ensure that you get a straight professional cut and eliminate any possible errors that would cause you to have to purchase more material or spend more time fixing them. Now, installing the countertops looked much the same as taking them out. You just screw everything into place and then you use some wood filler to fill in all of those seams and sand that down. So we used this pre-stain wood conditioner. It was really easy to apply and didn't take a lot of time at all, but this is going to make a major difference in how your countertops end up and how evenly your stain goes on. So if you are using anything other than a food grade oil or top coat, then you're definitely not going to want to skip this step. I just used a chip brush to brush it on both with and against the grain to make sure that it's getting into every single nook and cranny and crevice of these Butcher Block countertops. And then I'm going to go back and use a staining pad to absorb any of the excess, because of course we don't want that pulling up or drying tacky. We want it to enhance our finish, not hinder it. And I am going to work in small sections here so that no tackiness occurs. So I'm going to paint everything onto that section and then wipe back all of the excess before moving on to another section. It took me about 20 minutes to complete this in the entire kitchen, and this is a pretty large kitchen with a very large island, so I was surprised that it went that fast. And then I just had to wait 30 minutes for that to dry and absorb into the countertops before I could go in with my first coat of stain. So we're using this English chestnut wood stain. It is a beautiful color, and I'm going to apply this just the same as I did with that preconditioner. So I'm going to use a paintbrush, and going with the grain, I'm going to apply it in small sections, and then I'm going to use a staining pad to wipe it back and absorb any of the excess stain there. Now, if you do want your color payoff to be a little deeper, then you can wait a little longer or work in larger sections before you go back and wipe the excess. But just don't make sure that you're waiting so long that it starts to dry down and become tacky, because that will prevent you from being able to wipe away the excess the way that you need to, and it will cause you to have to sand everything down and restart on your project. So definitely make sure that you're keeping that in mind. Read the back of whatever can of stain you're using. If you're using a gel stain, water-based, or oil stain, the instructions are going to be different, but across the board they're all going to say wipe away the excess before it starts to dry. So that's what you're going to see me doing here. I'm going to work in these smallish sections. I'm going to go through, paint on all of the stain, and then go back and remove all of the excess before I move on to the next section.
Don't deny that I could use some company. All my friends say, honey, just let him be. Now your perfume stuck on my shirt, and there's an imprint left in my bed. I don't know about you, I'd put you first. I bought some new flowers, they're all dead. First you are in, then you are out, like snow in the spring. I just want your time. I just want your time, oh, time. I need your time. 365, 24/7, I'll be fine, as long as you spend a little time. Just want your time. You make me feel like we could be something more. The way your light shines, there's no shadows anymore. But then you put doubts and doubts and doubts in my mind. Still, you make me feel like we could be something more, something more. First you are in, then you are out, like snow in the spring. I just want your time. I just want your time, oh, time. I need your time. 365, 24/7, I'll be fine, as long as you spend a little time. Oh, spend a little time. I need your time. Spend a little time, yeah. 365, 24/7, I'll be fine, as long as you spend a little time. I just want your time.
This is such a good clip to point out how much of a difference there is, even from just painting those upper cabinets and replacing these countertops compared to how the kitchen looked before. It seriously looked like a black hole in relation to the rest of this house. It's a very open concept floor plan, and the dining room, which we did that makeover last spring, as well as the living room, those videos are already up in my channel, and I'll link the playlist for you in case you're going back and wanting to see that transformation. But they are such light, bright, airy spaces, and the kitchen became somewhat of a black hole. Like, it was just so dark and had such a shadow on this open floor plan. But painting those upper cabinets nearly eliminated all of that. And then changing out these countertops, it just created a way more cohesive space. Now, we did go on to paint the lowers and do a full kitchen transformation. That'll be the next video that you guys see, but I could have just stopped here and left it at this, and it would have been absolutely beautiful and done exactly what we wanted to do. Now, if you haven't already seen part 1 of this series, that's when I painted those upper cabinets. So I shared step by step how to paint your kitchen cabinets professionally without sanding on a super small budget. So I'm going to go ahead and link that in the iCard and down in the description box. If you haven't seen it already, it's definitely worth watching. Today we're doing these countertops, and then like I said, the next video you're going to see is the start to finish complete transformation, painting the lowers and what color we went with. So make sure that you are subscribed if you aren't already, and turn on that notification bell so that you don't miss whenever I am ready to share that video. This has been such a long and involved project, but now that we're finished with it, it was totally worth every single second of work. It turned out beautifully, and I just can't wait to share it with you and hear what you guys think of the finished product.
Okay, so we did 2 coats of stain and we got really even coverage. It all looks so good, but to protect it we have to do a top coat. So this is the one we decided to go with, this Watco brand Butcher Block Oil and Finish. It's supposed to be safe for food contact, so we definitely wanted to make sure that we had a food grade top coat to put on everything. And it also says on the container to apply it with a soft clean cloth, so I've got one of those right here, and we're gonna get to top coating all of this. Once I have all of it covered, it takes 72 hours before you can use the countertop, so it's going to be unusable. We're going to have to wait 3 days until we can even drop the sink in, but once we do, it's going to look so good. We're really excited to finally have it all finished, and Brandy and Jeremy are so excited to be able to actually use their kitchen again.
But I don't know how, 'cause every time I bump right into you, I get all tongue-tied. Want you to know me, but I'm way too shy. I can't just go around admitting that it's you I like. I wish that I had guts enough to flirt a little, but I'm too scared I'll fail. I wish that I could listen to the voice inside me, a voice that always says, give it a go, don't waste your time, 'cause you're running out. Give it a go and ask around, only takes one try, yeah. Even if she tells you no, then at least you know. So give it a go, give it a go. I just can't read you
Sitting underneath of this kitchen island, you can see the seam right there towards the left of the screen and how we clamped it together with a metal bracket. That's just what we use to secure that seam because the island is pretty large and a strange shape, but ideally you would want to use wood glue and clamps to seam your two pieces of butcher block together. We just didn't have clamps large enough, and to buy them would have been pretty expensive, so we used the metal bracket. It worked out fine. It's definitely the more budget-friendly option, but if you're going for a more professional finish, I just wanted to point out that you would definitely want to invest in the clamps and use some wood glue.
All of the oil is on now and it's already soaking in so beautifully. I did make sure to buff it all in as well as I could to get an even coverage, but if you see there, it's not like super slick, so that means it's not going to dry tacky on top. With these types of products, it's definitely better to work with thin layers and build them up if you need to, rather than have to completely strip it and start over because you put too much on to begin with. So this is going to take 3 days to dry, to cure enough that it's like ready for normal use, is what the back of the can says, quote unquote normal use. So all of the countertops are unusable, can't wipe them, can't touch them, can't set anything on them for 3 days. So that's definitely a downfall of this kind of process, but at the end of the 3 days, it's going to be totally worth it. So we'll come back then to drop in the sink, hook up all the plumbing, and make this a functional kitchen again. Okay, 3 days later, and this finish is all cured. It looks so good. You can see it where it kind of is like reflecting the light and has a slight sheen instead of that super matte raw wood look. It dried very even. We don't think that we're going to need a second coat, although I do believe that this is a product that will require you to like re-oil the surfaces maybe once a year. It's definitely not like a super thick top coat. It's more like something that's soaked into the wood. So I think it, just like any like granite or marble, has to be resealed annually. I think that that will happen with these countertops as well. So just something to keep in mind in case you are thinking about doing this also. But now that this finish is dry, we can finally drop in the sink and hook up the faucet so they can have like an actual working kitchen again. I know they're so excited about that. So Jeremy's here to help me. He's working right now on connecting the garbage disposal to the bottom. Can I see it real quick? Getting that all hooked up so that it's super easy to just drop the sink in and hook up the plumbing instead of getting it in there and then being under this tiny little cupboard to try to hook everything up at once. So I guess that's a little tip for you guys. Anything you can do when it's out of this sinkhole, go ahead and do. But as soon as he's finished with that, we're gonna drop it in, hook it up, get the faucets working, and have this as a functional kitchen again.
Okay, so we are all finished, but before I show you how the new countertops turned out, I just wanted to remind you what our starting point was. Brandy and Jeremy had these builder grade laminate countertops that, while they were in fine condition, they just weren't the vibe, and we wanted to give this kitchen a little facelift, a little bit of an upgrade, and the DIY butcher block was the perfect option. It turned out even better than we could have imagined, and it just completely transformed this space on a pretty tight budget. We're very proud of what we were able to accomplish within our budget restrictions, and I hope that that shows you that you can make upgrades to your kitchen or your home, no matter your skill level, no matter your budget. And I hope that I was able to share some tips and tricks with you that would make a project like this just a little bit more manageable and show you what to expect. So if you enjoyed, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you aren't already, and I'll see you all in the next one.